us, wherever you are. If you're joining us here in Santa Barbara, California on the television, we welcome you at TVSB. And so many of you are joining us from all over the world at goodlifetelevision.org and the other social media platforms. You can also find us, if you're a podcast person, at all the podcast platforms at Good Life Conversations. I'd love to have you join us. And then there's a YouTube channel, which we've kicked off in the last year, and we'd love you to go and check that out. That has actually all the long form interviews plus what we call power clips. We break them up into some of the great moments, and you'll find a lot of interesting, wonderful people there, all walks of life, overcomers, entrepreneurs, public servants, people of faith, young people, people with great stories. It's been amazing for us, and so we're so grateful that you're joining us from wherever you may be joining us. So thank you. We even have a Twitter account, by the way. I know some people call Twitter a sewer, but we call it home. So find us, Good Life. That might be one of the only good things you find at Twitter, actually, is the Good Life TV Twitter account. So find us there, and we think you're really going to enjoy it. Again, Good Life is about the good stuff, and we're highlighting great stories from people, and it's just been such an honor for us to do it. Every time I sit down here with my guest, I'm grateful. I'm especially grateful today for Sister Arthur. Sister, welcome.
Thank you.
It's great to have you.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this. I read a little bit about your story, but I kind of wanted to start further back. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing.
My upbringing. Well, I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois.
Okay.
I entered the Daughters of Charity in 1960.
1960.
In St. Louis, Missouri. And I am a nurse by profession. And I've worked in healthcare most of my life in our hospitals. And I spent 11 years in Africa.
Really?
And I worked in healthcare in Africa as well. And then I came back to the United States, and I was in Utah, and then I came to Santa Barbara.
What, I don't know anything about this. How does it work? In 1960, you joined the Daughters of Charity. How do you find out about it? What was that process like of you deciding this is what I'm going to do?
Well, I knew I was in Catholic schools since I was in kindergarten, and when I was in high school, I had this feeling inside that I was being called to give my life to the Lord in service, but I wanted to work primarily with the poor, and I was taught by sisters who were teachers, were nurses in hospitals, but I wanted to work with the poor. And I had learned about, I didn't know the Daughters of Charity, but I had heard about them, that's exactly what they do. They're in everything, social work, teaching, hospitals, but they always worked with the poor. So I got the courage up to call one day where they were and say, I think I'm interested, and I came and talked to them, and rest is history. Well, they told me right away, they said, well, you need to think about this, pray about it, and get back to me in a month. And if you still feel this way, then we'll make the arrangements. And then that's all, rest is history.
Wow. So is this something like people that join it, it's life?
Yes. Actually, our community is a little unique in that we're called a Society of Apostolic Life. So when we were founded by St. Vincent de Paul in the 17th century, he had no idea about finding a religious community. What he wanted was to have women, young Christian Catholic women, to come and help with the poor in Paris at the time, which was just awful. I mean, if you saw the movie or the play Les Miserables, that's what the situation was like. And St. Vincent de Paul was just obsessed with caring for the poor. And so he wanted to get women to come into the city to help do that. And he had some of the wealthy women care for them because these were country girls coming in. And pretty soon they lived together, and they would pray together, and they'd go out in the morning and do wherever they were going to do, either to deliver food to the people and medicines, or go to work in the prisons or with the galley slaves. And pretty soon they were forming like a religious community. And so he was very concerned because there were no religious communities at that time where the sisters went out on the streets and took care of the people. They were all cloistered. So he was very concerned that they would not get put into a cloister. So he didn't want any, what shall I say, language or trappings that would identify the women with religious. So they wore the dress of the day, and where they lived, they called their house, not a convent. And they came under St. Vincent de Paul. He was like the head that was over them. And the person who was in charge of the sister who would be in charge of the local house was not called a superior. She was called a sister servant, because she was to be the servant of her sisters. So, and they didn't take vows at the beginning. Then they took vows, and most religious take vows of poverty, chastity, obedience. And we take a fourth vow of service to the poor. So every work we do, we have to be with the poor. And so that's the way it is today. You know, you just wear a simple skirts and blouses with a, you know, our insignia that we are Catholic and we're Vincentians. And we call where we live houses. We call the person who's in charge of our house a sister servant. And we all take vows, the fourth vows, and they're renewed every year.
Oh, really?
So, for example, with most religious communities, they take vows temporarily for 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, and then for the rest of their life. We take vows for the first time with the intention that we would keep them for the rest of our lives, but legally they're 1 year at a time. So when we make the vow, it's for 1 year, and every year we formally ask to renew our vows. So if a sister felt for one reason or another that she could no longer do this life, she could do that. She would just make that known and could go.
What is tell me about the vows. Like, why the vows?
Well, it's a commitment to the Lord. That's what it is, because that's what our life is about. It's all about that.
Yeah.
It's not just being a nurse, because I am a nurse by
Right.
profession, but it's not just being a nurse or a teacher, but it's a nurse in service of the Lord. So we've given our lives to Him in the service of the church. So, and that's the way we do it. Like when you get married, you make a vow.
Yeah.
When you get married, it's
Yeah.
the same thing.
Yeah. And it must simplify your life.
It does, yes.
I mean, in terms of having that clarity about here's what it is. Here's what I'm called to.
That's right.
I mean, is that part of it
Yes.
for you?
You know, we're called to live simply.
Yeah.
Not in destitution, but we live simply.
Yeah.
It means that you go wherever you're needed. And that can be a challenge at times, because you can be in a mission that you absolutely love and doing a wonderful job, but if they felt that you're needed someplace else, then you're called and you say, yes, okay, I will go.
Wow.
And there's always a blessing in that,
Yeah.
you know.
It's an adventure too.
It was an adventure, yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
What was Africa like?
Africa was like a gift in my life. I went for the first time in '92, and I went to Sierra Leone. And I was in a hospital there, and I taught nurse aides. And nurse aides acted like LVNs, and LVNs acted like RNs, and RNs acted like doctors. And I lived in the country, in the bush. And it was wonderful. The people were wonderful. Unfortunately, my time there was cut short because we had a war that went on, and our village was attacked, and we had to leave. So, and at that time, it was one of the poorest countries in the Western Hemisphere. But it was also a wonderful experience. So I was home just for a brief time, and a new mission opened up, sponsored by the Irish sisters, daughters. And I knew it was a hospital as well, and so I volunteered to go there. And again, I worked in a hospital in the bush. And it was after a 30-year war that had ended, when the Portuguese had taken over and the Cubans had been there, in Russia, and finally the war ended, but the country was left like in turmoil. But we went in because there were Doctors Without Borders who were there in this hospital. And they go temporarily and then they move on. And so they were telling Catholic Relief Services that you need to keep this hospital here because it's the only thing you have, but they had to leave. So our community was asked if we would go. So we went and we worked with Catholic Relief Services, and we worked with the country to reestablish. Our idea was to, and what we were asked to do is to reestablish, get the hospital up functioning again, and to train the local staff, which we did. We were able to train 30 nurses to stay and take over. And then it was time for us to leave. And then I was home for about a year or so, and then Kenya came up, and I was asked, I went to Kenya. It was completely different because it was a big city, compared to the bush. But there I was asked to help set up a comprehensive health care center for people living with HIV/AIDS for adults and children.
Wow.
So that's what we did, and I came home about 6 years ago.
Wow, to Utah.
I came home to Utah. That was a big surprise to go because I wasn't doing healthcare then. I was asked to take over a center that was in a very poor area in Ogden, and it was about 98% Hispanic, low-income women, to teach them workable skills. Most of them were just hidden in their houses all the time. So it was to get them out, to teach them sewing, English as a second language, computers, and to start, we had an after-school program for their children because they couldn't help their kids with homework.
Wow.
So that was a wonderful experience as well.
Wow.
And then I was asked to come here to Santa Barbara.
Wow.
So
well, this has been a journey.
It has been a journey, but it's an exciting journey too.
I'm with Sister Arthur of St. Vincent's here in Santa Barbara, which we're going to talk about in a second. But I always think about this when I think about people that have committed their life. 63 years, the Daughters of Charity. I think it's going to stick.
I think so at this point in time.
I think you're in. You know, when you're serving the poor, in the scripture it talks about you're actually serving Jesus himself.
Yes, exactly.
Do you think about that very often?
I do. I do because, well, it's in all of our prayers, it's in all of our readings, it's just like ingrained in us, it's in our blood, you know. And I think it comes to the head mostly when we're faced with somebody who's not easy to deal with. And I remember St. Vincent saying in his writings, he was talking to the sisters, and he said, you know, the more revulsive somebody might appear, the more unresponsive and negative they may be, that's the one you need to love the most. So I see that often with working with the homeless. You know, sometimes you can get somebody who is like, or very mentally unstable, and then that's when you say, boy, this is it. You have to just reach out even more. You know?
It's so powerful.
Yeah.
Loving the unlovable. Exactly.
Well, you know what that is from your work.
Yeah, well, it's I think it's in the scripture as well. You know, it's easy to love somebody who's, you know, either there's something you're getting out of the deal, or or it's just easy. Then if it's easy, you know, it's easy. But that what you just said, I mean, that's where the rubber meets the road in terms of why are we doing this?
Yes,
well,
exactly.
It's because I'm serving this person as if it was Jesus himself, because it is, you know, in a way, in a sense. That's amazing.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
That's the wonderful gift about working with the homeless. You know, everybody thinks that, I shouldn't say everybody, but many people have the idea that homeless are drug addicts, alcoholics, they don't want to work, now, or they're all mentally ill. Now, I'm not saying that that I've not had the opportunity to serve people who are alcoholics or drug addicts or mentally ill, but not everybody is. People who are homeless all have their own stories. And that's the thing, it's more than just giving the food. What it is sitting down next to them and saying, tell me about your life, you know. And then you hear the real story, what has happened, and then what can we do then to reach out to get them on another path, you know. So that's a great blessing to work with them.
There are no throwaways.
No throwaways.
In the kingdom of God.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know, we have, where I work at Father Virgil Cordano Center, we have many, many volunteers who work with us, because we only have 2 paid staff, and then myself and one other sister. And I'm not there every day. I'm in and out every day, but not for, you know, the whole time that we're there. But the volunteers are. We have a corps in the morning that prepares their breakfast, and we have a corps in the afternoon who prepares their lunch. And it's a different group every day, and they are the biggest advocates for the homeless, because they know, they've met them, and they know that everybody's not the same. And they've learned to treat them with great respect. And then you get respect back. Yeah. You know, when you treat somebody with respect, they treat you back. I can't tell you how many times when I'm there, I usually am there Monday mornings all the time, and when they get ready to leave, they go, thank you. Everybody comes up and says, thank you, you know.
So sweet. It's another perspective that I've thought about on this, which is, I think sometimes we think of the homeless as a category, right? Not a person, not John, not Mary, not as a category. And then I think we can also think about these friends, as a problem to be solved, or somebody that I need to change, when that's not the spirit of what you're doing. No. The spirit is, this is a human being, here's a cup of cold water, in love, exactly. As unto Jesus himself. There's no agenda, is there?
No. No.
Which I just think is so wonderful.
Yeah, I'd love you to come. It's
God's job. I will.
I would love you to come and see.
Because I just think about that all the time, because I think we can get so caught up in the results. What am I trying to achieve here? Yeah. When that's not really the idea at all. I mean, and it's not a number or a category or a problem to be solved. It's a person, and we want to love them. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, and the place, they'll say, it's just a place for them to come and rest. You know, many of them sleep outside.
Yeah.
Or sleep in their cars. So they come inside, and everybody knows their name. And yesterday we served 81 people. But you learned people's names, and they're welcomed as their names. So they feel like there's somebody, you know, and it's a place some can come just for breakfast, some come for for lunch, and some stay all day. They can wash their clothes, check for job search on the computer.
Wow, what a wonderful thing.
It is.
How has it been at St. Vincent's?
Oh, St. Vincent's is another thing, you know. The Daughters of Charity have been in service of the people, for the people of Santa Barbara for 165 years. We came in 1858 at the request of the Catholic Bishop Thaddeus Amat, to start an English-speaking school. The sisters came from Emmitsburg, Maryland, and they started the school. And from there, they ended up taken care of orphans, and they took care of orphans and educated orphans for 40 some years. They went from that when the Department of Social Services asked that children now go into foster homes. Then the sisters helped them get into foster homes, and then the sisters were asked by the Department of Social Service and Education to start a program for children, especially girls, who were developmentally challenged, mentally challenged. And so they developed a program for them that existed for over 58 years. And then again, about 1936, the idea was that these children would be mainstreamed into regular public school who had programs set up for them. So again, they helped the children. At one point, we had 160 girls, 14 sisters, and 28 lay staff taking care of these young women. So, so then they were helped to mainstream into the public school system. Then we had to say, what are we going to do? Because the building that we had then, the big old building on Camino Real, was still there. So we said, it's always the need is, what is the need of the poor? So it's been orphans, it's been education, but was also always for the poor who didn't have anything. It was for the developmentally disabled. So what was the need now? And the biggest need that came up was housing. So they tore the whole building down, and they worked to get, it took 10 years to get the permits and everything. But currently we have 75 low-income apartments for families, 2, 3, 4-bedroom apartments for low-income families. We have 95 one-bedroom apartments for low-income seniors. And we have 4 cottages that we help with our family strengthening program. And these are women who are in transition, some out of abuse programs, situations. And they can bring 2 children, they can come pregnant, and they can stay for 27 months. And they have case managers that work with them and help them get jobs or get schooling if that's what the desire is. They help them learn how to get a bank account and how to save money. They do parenting classes with them. So at the end of 27 months, they can get into housing. They have some money. We also have a daycare center on our property, which we started in 1918 as a result of World War I, when all the men were at war and the women wanted to go to help. They didn't have any place for their children. So the sisters started a daycare center, which was on Canon Perdido. And that building is still there today. So the children, like these young women, if they're in school or working, their children can be in our daycare center. So that's on our 20-acre.
It's amazing. We went for a tour a few weeks ago. Regina Ruiz is here. We got to go see, and it's so inspiring. I mean, it's so inspiring, and I love how I don't want to say evolved, but it's kind of the mission or the work has kind of changed with the times.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
What's going on?
That's right.
Which is so.
That's
great.
what the need is about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
what
that's
the needs
so
of the people.
great. And housing, which you're addressing now, is certainly a huge
We have
problem.
long waiting lists to get on both.
Yeah.
You can imagine.
It's a growing problem.
Yeah. It
So
is.
St. Vincent's is a wonderful thing. If you haven't seen it, I'd encourage you to go by. And it's again, it's 20 acres. Is that 20 acres? Beautiful, beautiful. Peace. And the way that they serve people is really remarkable.
And our homeless center is not on that ground. It's on the little strip mall across
Upper
154 Upper State.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's an Upper State. There's a drop-in center for these homeless friends, and they serve them there, and people can volunteer.
Oh yes,
They're always looking for volunteers, so that's another thing. So as you reflect back on your life, would you just like offer a little reflection on something you've learned or something you've that stands out, something about God, something about anything?
Okay.
That's kind of a broad one, but I thought I'd give it a shot.
Okay. I think as I look back, I'm well educated. I was blessed, that the community educated me. But we don't always, I don't go in, or none of us should go in with thinking we have all the answers. That the poor can teach us a lot.
Yes.
People we serve can teach us a lot. And in little ways, I'll give you one example. When I was in Africa, especially when I was in Angola, I taught nurses, helped teach nurses, and I was in charge of pediatrics, and I was getting ready to hire now these new graduates. And the young fellas always loved to wear sunglasses with the little thing that says made in Japan or something, China. They thought this was like, I don't know, something
Cool.
to wear. The cool, right. So he came in, and I know this young fella. I knew he was a good nurse. He's going to be a good nurse. And he came in with his sunglasses on, and I said to him, Joel, you can't wear those sunglasses if you're going to be working in pediatrics. You have to work with the moms and be able to talk to them, explain to them what's going on with the child, and give them instructions, and they need to be able to see you. So you can't wear that. He said, okay, and he took it off, and he didn't have one eye. He had lost one eye.
Oh,
and I said,
goodness.
what happened here? He said, I lost it in the war. All those young people had been in the war. But what it taught me, if I had said to him, Joel, how come you're wearing the glasses?
Right.
He would have said to me, oh, I lost my one eye. Do you think it'd be okay?
Yeah.
I would have.
So
So
good.
that's the way you
That's
just
so good.
learn. You just learn. People
Isn't that powerful?
teach you.
That's so true. We have a severely brain injured child, and that I talk about just about every program, because she's taught me more maybe than any other person in my life. This little girl born with like a third of a brain, who cerebral palsy was her diagnosis, and like you think, it's unbelievable how much we learn from her. And I think it's the same.
That.
And I thought about this. I don't know. This may sound a little strange, but I'll say it. Sometimes working with whatever these populations, marginalized or difficult people, or special needs people, or mentally ill people, whatever it might be. One of our experiences with Ella Claire taught me a little bit about this, because we were at this institutes back east, and there's all special needs people. Okay, it's all brain injured people, and their parents bring them. Like, there's no handicap parking places because we're all handicapped. Right?
Yes, exactly.
So when we were there, we were learning about the brain, and like, why do these kids drool, right? Like, who wants to drool? Well, it might be because they can't feel their brain injuries affected their sensation, right? Or why does an autistic kid yell and scream or thrash around, some of them beating their head against the wall? Well, we learned it's because sometimes their hearing is so sensitive, they can hear a TV when it's off, and so sounds, it's like excruciating pain, right? So they behave in a way that's, and it hit me one day. I think sometimes we look at a symptom of a person, and we get annoyed or bothered or judgmental about the symptom, when we don't think about is the injury that they might have. And I'm not talking about physical as much as I am, like, there's a reason why people behave the way they do. Like with Ella Claire, one of the reasons she behaves the way she does is because she's injured. Well, we're all injured.
Exactly.
In some way, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
We're all broken in some way. We're all, but that helped me so much, because I was going, gosh, this person bothers me. What did, or why do they do that? Well, maybe it's an injury I don't know about. Maybe it's the eye that the person doesn't have behind the sunglasses. That's why he wears the sunglasses.
That's right.
And you and I can think, man, what a disrespectful person to come in here with sunglasses on, and you go, no, he's got an injury.
Yeah.
So I just think that's such a powerful thought you share. I mean, I think that's a different perspective, like a different way of seeing.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful.
You know, one other thing you've probably heard of Martin Sheen, the actor. Okay, so he came one time when I was in the hospital in Los Angeles, at St. Vincent's in Los Angeles, and he was talking to us. They were doing a filming, but on the side, he was talking to us, and he said he had a friend who was a priest who was a parish priest, and he wrote this book, and he wrote about instances, experiences. And he said he remembered one time this woman came to Mass every day, and she had this young man with her every day. I think it was her son. And she went to communion, and he didn't. And the priest watched this all the time, and finally he said to her, I see you come to communion every day with your son, but he doesn't come with you. Why is it? And she said, oh, Father, he couldn't come. He's mentally handicapped. He couldn't come. And he said, let me talk with him, okay? Bring him and let me see. So he did. He met with him for a period of time, and he said to his mom, he understands. He understands what we're doing here. He understands what he's going to receive, who he's going to receive. So she said, okay. So he said, we're going to have him come whatever day it was. And we're just going to have him go up with everybody else. It's not going to be any big thing. So the day came, and he went up first. His mother was right behind him. He received Holy Communion. He broke it in half and turned to his mother and said, the body of Christ. And the priest said, you think he didn't know?
Oh.
You see?
Wow. It's for all of us, isn't it? Wow.
Yeah. So there's a lot of exactly what you're saying, you know,
So
what you're
good.
learning.
And you know, the least among us, you know, what a wonderful way to spend our lives.
Yeah.
As you've demonstrated, 63 years. It's such an honor to meet you.
Thank you, same here.
Thank you. If you
Yeah.
haven't visited St.
you.
Vincent's, I'd encourage you to do that. Ask for Regina. She's our
Yes, she's the best.
She's the best one.
She's the best.
Second best, maybe, Sister Arthur, I don't know. But they'd love to meet you, give you a tour, if you want to volunteer, if you want to give, if you want to, whatever. Just go see them. St. Vincent's here in Santa Barbara, California. Thank you,
Thank
Sister
you.
Arthur.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. It's been wonderful. We'll see you next time.